And welcome everybody to the premiere episode of Monday Afternoon Dead, the nerd presented by Nerdified Podcast. I'm your host Paul. This is my Monday podcast going solo. Haven't really found anybody that wants to talk Walking Dead, so I'm going to just do it myself. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm just going to put out my opinion about episode 1 and 2. We're going to get to the premiere. I was going to do it last week. I thought I was going to have somebody that would want to step in and help record it, but that it didn't pan out, so I didn't do it. I should have done it, but now I'm making up for this episode. So episode 1. So as we saw last year when they did the recap of The Walking Dead, we knew that there was going to be some shit going down, right? Because because Alpha and the Whisperers, man, they just killed off a whole bunch of characters, and that's the one thing that always seems to bug me about The Walking Dead and their decision making, especially when it comes to like knocking off characters. Like, I understand if it's a plot point where they're looking to move the story forward or to throw a turn, but man, they killed like 8 people. I mean, I could see if maybe it was like 2 or 3, but why did they kill Tara? Why did they kill Henry? Why did they kill the little tenderoni? I can't think of her name right now. Henry's little love interest, or wanted to be his love interest. I just don't see the point of them taking all those people out. I mean, sometimes I feel like AMC in The Walking Dead is always trying to like cut costs. Like they're really trying to maximize profit instead of like having all these quality characters. I mean, because all those people get paid. All the series regulars, they're getting paid. It doesn't matter if they're in the episode or not. I mean, they're still getting a paycheck from AMC. So I can't say that I agree with them just doing like this mass killing and killing all those people. I could see maybe killing Henry if they wanted to further this storyline of like, Gangster Carol coming back. Because, I mean, who doesn't want to see motherfucking Gangster Carol come back? I know I do. I mean, when Carol has gone off, I mean, it's such an arc, from Carol from the beginning, where she was just like this timid, victim of spousal, abuse, domestic violence, and how timid she was until like she got to where she just didn't give a fuck, and she would just drop you. If you were trying to do something, or you were trying to hurt somebody in the group, or you were doing something bad, she would just drop you. And I mean, I know that, but she also had a moral code. It's not like she just turned into a psychopath. I mean, she had a function, she had a direction, she had a set of codes that she followed. And so for them to set that up with Henry dying. Now, if it was just Henry, you know what I mean? Because I mean, I feel like they could have went that way in the story. They could have just said, okay, look, King Ezekiel, Queen Carol, okay, well then we're going to kill the prince. And I think they could have accomplished so much with just only knocking off that one person. But then they just go off and they kill like 8 people. And now I just don't agree with their tactics of trying to keep viewership fresh. Give us a story. We've already loved these characters. It doesn't matter whether it's Tara. Oh man, I can't think of that younger girl's name. And then you got Henry. Then all the other, Brett Butler, her character got killed. Now, those characters, they were all, part players. I don't, for them to get knocked off, it doesn't bother me. But when you just start eradicating like core story characters, I just feel like it's unnecessary. Like, I mean, if they, kill Henry, right? Piss off Carol, because I think that's what everybody wants, right? Because even as we start to get into the first episode of season 10, that standoff at the end inside in that quarry where Alpha comes out and Carol's like just giving her like the stank eye, like, me and you are gonna rumble, bitch. And I, for one, cannot wait for it. So as we go into episode 1, Carol and Ezekiel's relationship is frayed, obviously. I mean, he's still in love. But, Carol, I mean, she's lost. If you think at it, she lost her own child. She lost Sophia. And then she had to, murder those two little, one little girl who's turning into a psycho. If you look at it now, God forbid that she would have wandered off into the woods and got picked up by the Whisperers, because that chick would have just fell in line and she would have been like a straight killer. And it, I mean, she's had all this loss, and that's just like kids that she's latched onto. Not, Sophia was her own, and then all the other kids that came after that she latched onto. And the last one that she, kind of opened herself up to love was Henry. And then Alpha goes, and the Whisperers go off and kill him. I think if they needed to jumpstart this, like, bring in the old Carol back, where, because you don't want old Carol back. You want Carol to be fishing or baking cookies or, fucking crocheting, fucking sweaters. You don't want Gangster Carol, because Gangster Carol is going to start wiping people out. And I don't think, it's that it's the whole thing is like, these fools don't know. They don't know who they're bringing out of the dark. Gangster Carol was in the dark. Let her stay there, because when she come out, bodies start dropping. I mean, there's 10 seasons. Well, let's say 7 seasons of this. Where Carol was just lighting fools up. I mean, when she went into Terminus and like saved everybody. I mean, that wouldn't have been Carol from season 1. That was Gangster Carol just coming in. And then once she started to have this crisis of conscience, and, she didn't want to be this person anymore. And so she found a way to get away from it. And, so anyway, I'm getting back on the topic. So we have, they moved through the borders. They kind of violated that thing. But, I don't know if they knew, right? But I guess now, since they know that, Carol, and I think Carol is either let me go away or let me start this shit up. And because I really think that's what you're going to see, right? Is Carol's like, either just let me go and don't fucking come after me, or then let me do what I do, right? Because Carol will start setting shit off real quick. And, Michonne and all the rest of the Hilltop and, what was it? Now it's Oceanside and all the Alexandria, all these people are kind of like settling back down. And like Carol just, I think it's the best thing for her, because like, you got to let Carol go, or Carol gonna come back and she's gonna start some shit, as we saw at the end of episode 1. So let me get back on topic, because that's the part of this new season that makes me excited, is seeing Carol jump off, right? Because we haven't seen Gangster Carol, and I missed her badly, and I can't, and I hope they finally decided that they got to cut her loose, right? Because she wants it. I mean, that's why she goes out on that boat, because she knows that if they let her stick around, she's going to start some shit. God damn it. I keep focusing on Carol. But anyway, that's what I'm most excited about. So the kids are, the majority of the group is down at Oceanside. They're fishing, collecting seashells. Everybody's having a good time. It's like Oceanside. Everybody's beautiful. And then you see them training. They're out there with like Spartan shields and fucking spears. They're, marching in formation. They're taking on walkers. I mean, they have been spending their time just kind of like, vacationing in Oceanside. Apparently, obviously they've been preparing, because they know at some point they're going to either do something, or, the Whisperers are going to assume they did something, and then they're going to come for them. And so they had to be out training, which is smart. And then they had this radio system between Oceanside, Hilltop, and Alexandria. I mean, they're kind of networking now. But the problem is that it's hard to prepare for an enemy that you don't know is coming. You don't know what they're up to. You don't know what they're doing. I mean, you don't know where they're at any one point or the other. And so they have to prepare, for an eventual altercation. And so, and I didn't understand. I mean, it was the whole part, like the first episode. I mean, I understood what the premise was. They were trying to show there's an event, right? There's an event. A satellite is falling out of the sky. It's, re-entering. It's catching on fire. It's close. It's not way out in the ocean. That would have been, everybody just been, oh, look, it's a satellite in the ocean. But no, it makes landfall. And now we got a forest fire. And so as all this stuff going on, and maybe some of you didn't understand what was going on, but it was just kind of different groups within Alexandria, Oceanside, and Hilltop. They're all their perspectives of seeing, this satellite make reentry, burst into flames, and then the end where they're all up together and they're all mounting up and they're going into the woods, and even though that they know that this is technically trespassing with Alpha and the Whispers, I mean, what are they gonna do? Just fucking let their homes burn down? I mean, it's a risk that they have to take. And I thought this episode was very well directed. I liked the pace of it. I got off the bat of what they were trying to show. They were trying to show everybody's perspective of seeing this event happen, and you're kind of seeing it real time, but from different angles. And I get that, and I like it. And there was a lot of action. There was a lot of stuff going on. They kind of get you caught up on, where they've come so far. And I really thought episode 1 was a really good episode. And then episode 2, I don't understand why The Walking Dead always has to do these origin stories. And they take up an entire episode of an origin story. And it's like, I think we can, look, if you want to give us some background on Alpha, okay, her and Beta's relationship, her trauma, I get it. But you have to kind of mix it up and give us some real-time things going on, and then cut back during the lull points. You know what I mean? Because you can't have, you could have wall-to-wall action, but I know that there's going to be ups and downs in these, TV shows, right? So whenever you get a low moment, shoot it back. And I think they could have told that story. It was much like my gripe with Game of Thrones season 8. They could have put the first and second episode into one episode, right? Get that one out of the way. Okay, hey, this is everybody meeting up. This is everybody who hadn't seen each other in a long time. This is the situation that's going on. And you get little bitty chunks, little bitty pieces of all these, egos and characters and beef and love. It's just all mixing up into like this stew. Okay, knock that shit out, all right? Be done with it, right? Because I don't want to spend an hour just watching how Alpha becomes Alpha. Because I think they probably could have cut that down into 20 minutes and explained to you what was going on. And so I thought it was a wasted episode. I don't need it. Like, even as much as I like, when Morgan had his little freak out and that guy found him and he kept him locked in the cage. That episode, I thought that they could have condensed that into 20 minutes and then woven it in to an hour episode, and you can kind of get the picture. Because people want to see story, they want to see drama, they want to see shit going on, and yes, they want to ask a question. Hey, well, what did Morgan do when he was here and he's there? You can edit that shit out down in the flashbacks. You don't have to dedicate an entire episode to finding out that this bitch is crazy. I think we've all come to that conclusion that she is crazy, and I don't understand why they need to spend an entire hour on it. And so now you go into episode 3 and this shit's starting to pick up, right? They should have just kept the momentum, because you already had the momentum that was so great in the first episode, where you had like this event, and then you had that big scene where they're fighting fires and trying to fight off zombies, and they're doing it all without trying to alert the Whisperers that they've trespassed back into their property. And then you just get this momentum, and then they just stop rolling the ball, and then you just get like a boring hour of Alpha, of us getting an origin story on Alpha, which I don't think anybody wanted. They didn't give us an episode like this with Negan. You know what I mean? Negan kind of basically dropped, hints on you of what his life was prior to being, a psychopath. And then, Negan, getting back to Negan, speaking on that topic, so you have Negan is now a farmer. That's cool. It's good that he's not just cooped up in the box, because he was going batshit crazy. And I think they know that it's better to have a healthy Negan, even if he's kind of still off, than having like huddling in a puddle of piss because he's got cabin fever and he's losing his mind. And then you have the relationship with the girl. Man, I need to write these names down because when I start talking, I can. If you ask me when like in the street, hey, who's this girl? I'll be like so and so. I start doing a podcast, but Henry's little tenderoni that who defected from the Whisperers. Now her and Negan are having like this kind of this dynamic relationship because they're both outsiders, and I don't know if it's gonna play any further to anything, but it just kind of sets up like they're both kind of on the outside and like they're kind of tolerated, you know what I mean? And that's what she's going through. She's just being tolerated, and it has to be embarrassing that she's 17, 18 years old, and she's learning reading with like 7 and 8 year olds. That's got to be tough, and so that's why she's out swinging that staff around. And and you can't underestimate, even though Negan is kind of like has his wits back about him. I mean, he's still Negan. He's still gonna be, trying to get into people's minds. That's why he still talks shit to father, not the father. That shit is great. And so they keep talking. He keeps talking shit to everybody. And so I mean, but I think he kind of when he was when he was talking to him and he was telling him, I see the writing on the wall. Shit's fixing to go down. So I'm going to be in here where hopefully I can survive this because, apparently you people ain't taking the precautions. Because if the Whisperers were threatening Negan, at least, a couple years ago, it would have been a full assault. He would have rolled into those woods with machine guns, and it doesn't matter. Once he couldn't distinguish who was a walker and who was a Whisperer, he would just rolled in force, and he would have just obliterated everything in that forest, right? That would have been a Negan 101 move. But, now he's kind of, under house arrest for lack of a better understanding of what really his role will play. I mean, I feel like at some point they're going to have to cut him loose too. You know what I mean? I think all this, preparedness and all this watching and being prepared and this network communication is all just kind of sidestepping the inevitable. And at some point, when you're dealing with somebody, it was just like the governor or Negan. You could be doing everything that you could to keep a situation from getting violent. And there's going to be things, they're going to start doing shit because as soon as they know that you'll acquiesce or that you're going to be subservient, they're going to keep testing the line. They're going to keep asking for more and keep asking for more. And it's the Whisperers, they want war. They want to fight. And so they won't give a shit if you were crossing borders because you were trying to stop a forest fire. That's going to be enough for them to come after you. So it's interesting to think. So really, I'm just going to do an episode 1 review because I really could have cared less. I mean, there were some parts in the new scene about, her and her daughter. I mean, yeah, you can put on a front as being a psycho, but if you had a traumatic loss like it would be to losing a child, I know that shit sticks with you. But I mean, really, that's kind of assumed. You know what I mean? If I never met someone and I meet them for the first time, and it's like, hey, how's it going, right? And they walk away, and then the guy next to me goes, hey man, they lost their child, and I go, man, that sucks. I bet that's tough. I bet she's dealing with some shit, or they are dealing with some shit. It's assumed. You know what I mean? I mean, unless they're like psychopath, which, that's what Alpha made you think, that she was just cold-blooded. I mean, to be true, in the end, the truth is that she's still harboring that shit because it was a traumatic loss. So it, I mean, I just don't feel, I feel like sometimes they waste episodes because, it wasn't that really that big. There wasn't a lot of people in it. They didn't have a lot of actors. They, cut in real time versus the past. And it was just, it just threw everything. It threw the momentum out of whack. I didn't feel like they should have focused on Alpha. I mean, I think they could have moved the story forward and put in bits and pieces of her past to get her for us to understand that what made her who she is. You know what I mean? And then you're starting to see a little bit of they also showed maybe a little fray in the bond between her and Beta. And now since this girl Thora Birch, well, I didn't even know it was Thora Birch. I didn't know it was Thora Birch until they started doing promos for The Talking Dead. I was like, for real, that's her? So, I mean, it was great acting. And, and they her and Samantha Morton, Alpha, they look similar, right? Like they really could have been mother and daughter. Now, they're not, carbon copies, but they look close enough. They have the eyes, they have the face structure. They really could, look like they could be related. So I really dig that casting. I really think they did a good job figuring that out and figuring out an actress that could play that part. Because now she becomes a wedge between Alpha and Beta, and I guess that would probably make them the most vulnerable if the two head figures are not coherent, cohesive. They're not synergizing. They're not together. And so, yeah, I mean, again, they could have just flashed back to some shit that was happening in between, furthering the story and keeping the momentum up. Because me and my buddy James, we're sitting here watching it and we're like, what the fuck? You just kind of like throw us this softball, and man, it's just a meaty softball, and we think episode 2 is going to be where, you just crack it into left field, and it's just like a fucking dud. And it's like, oh, we get some background, but both of them, he and I were both like, man, we could have done without this. And that's when I told him they could have just edited down and mixed in this shit in part of what was going on, furthering the storyline, keeping the momentum, and kind of keeping people tuned in. It's like, because I could have done without a Alpha origin story, for real. So yeah, I mean, and it really, so now we gotta wait. See, this is the biggest disappointment, right? So they give us this dud of an episode, and then now we gotta wait 6 days in order to see what happens. Like we have to, first of all, we lose an hour to an origin story that I probably think that nobody wanted. I could have certainly done without it. And now we gotta wait 6 days in order to see what happens and see the story pick up. And it's so out of whack. It just throws the momentum off in the storytelling. I mean, of course, they go on The Talking Dead and they talk about how great the episode was. It's like, yeah, because those motherfuckers want to keep getting checks. But, I mean, if, hopefully critics are like, we could have just done without this. You could have just edited. You could have spent 20 minutes on this, piecing it in and out of a story, furthering what the momentum that we got from episode 1. So, yeah. I don't know, man. I was all super pumped. Episode 1, I was really looking forward to it. Especially in the end when Alpha came out and her and Carol had that standoff. And I'm thinking, man, they finna let gangster Carol loose and she's gonna start wrecking shit. I mean, there is seasons of this show where Carol just had didn't even had less than a molecule give a fuck. And she was working through everybody. Anybody got in her way, they got took down. Carol was taking care of her group, herself, anybody that she was loved, any kind of kid. You got in the way, Carol took you down. And even sometimes when she didn't want to, she was still gangster when it was time, Everybody wants to be a gangster until it's time to do gangster shit. Nobody can say that about Carol, because when it's time to do dirt, Carol is motherfucking ready. And that's what the most part of this that I'm excited about. So yeah, quick note, little review. I saw Gemini Man on Saturday. Me and my brother went, and got to say, I wasn't really impressed with it. I was hoping for a lot, So what I'm gonna end this podcast with is a little spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Okay, so I mean, you pretty much got the well. I can do a spoiler list. So here's my take. Action was okay, right? For me, you could see a lot of the CGI was taking over the action, and um, you could see shit that was obviously fake. Now look, you could argue that's the same thing with these superhero movies, right? Everybody wants to say the same thing, and I'm like, look, it was like the same argument with the Matrix. Okay, when the Matrix came out, they told you in the beginning that this is not real, that this is a reality, right? You're in a video game, for lack of a better explanation, right? So rules in video games don't apply to real world. There is no physics, right? And that's the point of them training. Morpheus is training Neos to explain to him that there is no box. It's like the kid said, there is no spoon. And so you can do all this wild shit, right? And it's the same rules apply to superheroes, right? It's fantasy. We know there's not superheroes, right? And so when you try to apply those principles to a movie that's kind of supposed to be kind of, contemporary, maybe even futuristic to a degree, and you start having these people do this crazy shit, it's kind of like why G.I. Joe, the movie, the remakes didn't work, right? Because they were trying to make them, and yeah, technically it was a superhero movie, but it was just like it was a little too much. And I think they should have spent more. If they were going to spend all that money on CGI of having these characters doing all this wild shit, they probably should have saved that, did practical effects, have real stuntmen, and spent that money on the face of Will Smith. Because let me tell you, when he starts talking, when the young Will Smith starts talking, you're just like, you can't help but notice that it is totally fake. Like, these guys did not reach out to Marvel or whoever is doing this de-aging technology for Marvel. They didn't link up. Yeah, it was bad. I was really looking forward to having this movie. Because, I'm going to tell you, all the shit that they show you in the trailer, right, is not the stuff that happens. They leave out, because I think if they'd have showed all the action scenes in the, at least more of the action in the scenes, people would have started spotting. I was like, man, that looks kind of cheesy. I mean, we know that's not Will Smith. We know that's CGI. Yeah. I mean, it could have been a brilliant movie. It had a fresh idea. It had, obviously had Will Smith. They had Benedict Wong, my man Wong from Doctor Strange. They had this one woman, Mary Armistead. She was a good character. She was kind of playing like a CIA agent that's kind of like watching over Will Smith's character. You had Clive Owens as the big baddie. So yeah, I mean, it had all the pieces of being a really good action movie. And look, man, I understand, right? I mean, it's kind of futuristic, but it's not. You know what I mean? Now, if it was like in the future, you know what I mean? Then maybe I'd have been more forgiving of how they did things and how they use CGI and how they, did things in the movie, right? But yeah, they should have spent the money. They should have spent the money on working on that de-aging of Will Smith, man, because it was horrible. It was really horrible, and I feel bad because I really wanted to like this movie. And if they cleaned up the CGI and they, especially on the de-aging of Will Smith, and then they, there was ways they could have shot everything with practical effects and still had it look badass. I mean, we've seen tons of action movies. I mean, look, when I think of an action movie that's like gritty and has realism, you have to go back to the Born Identity. Because, man, when that movie came out, nobody was doing that kind of fight. It was jump cuts and handheld and steady, and it was vicious, right? And so you got to have that kind of realism. And man, and it just didn't have it, and you knew it was all CGI, and it was just, man, it was disappointing. Did I walk out of it? Obviously, I didn't. I watched it to the end. If you have, if somebody's willing to, if you can go for free, you probably could go and kill 2 hours, and kind of, if you listen to the podcast, the 5 of you that still listen, go and watch this movie, and it's evident of where they should have spent more money on, and where they should have spent less money on. They should have just had stuntmen do stunts, and they should have spent all that CGI money on making a believable younger Will Smith, because it was horrible. But so yeah, season 1 of Walking Dead was great. Got me jacked up for of what was going to go down during the season. Rolling into episode 2, they kind of give you like a sucker punch, and it's just like you feel like you've wasted an episode. And I guess if I was going to rate Gemini Man, I say it's a 2.5 out of 5. I think this could have been a 4-star movie had they focused on the CGI, and if they'd have rearranged their priorities in far of their CGI. But if you got tickets, or it's a rainy day, it's not a terrible movie. It's entertaining. It's just that had they had those things fixed in the movie, it would have been a better movie to watch. Like, it's not a terrible movie to watch. It is a good story. There are good characters. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, but sometimes it's just either overdone or not enough. And so that's what I'm going to end this Nerdified Monday Walking Dead Monday Morning Dead review. As always, I'm your host, Paul. So hey guys, I'm gonna start trying to pump these out, me and Chris, or me and whoever just want to do these things with me, because I feel like there's a lot of shit that I want to talk about, and not everybody's into all. It seems like I'm into everything, and not everybody's into everything. But we're gonna try to keep pumping these out. Follow us on Nerdified on Facebook, Nerdified Podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud, Nerdified, or soundcloud.com/Nerdified Podcast. You can also find us at YouTube/Nerdified. Like and subscribe, like and share. Hopefully at some point, if there's enough of a movement and I start getting plenty of listeners, I'm going to start a Patreon so we can improve and bring a better podcast. Hopefully I can find some co-hosts, maybe rotate some out to where I can get people and we can talk about a whole plethora of things, if you will, in the realm of TV, music, movies, video games. I want to talk about it all because I like to talk. But that's it for today. Thank you for everybody that keeps listening or liking or at least sharing, keeping it out there. All right, until next time. This is the Nerdified Podcast, Monday Morning Dead, or Monday Afternoon Dead when I record this. Yeah, Monday afternoon. Peace.